The blank canvas is beautiful from a distance, but paralyzing up close. Start painting anyway. So who am I? Well, I'm a marketer, a feminist, an advocate and mentor for young females, a sessional lecturer at universities, something I really, really love, a mum, a wife, a lifelong learner, a proud Australian, an even prouder Bondi local, and a tier 1 customer of the Iconic, which basically means I spend far too much money on our platform. And I've really had what I consider to be a privileged career so far. I've been working for almost 30 years, and I've had the privilege of going across many countries and brands and categories and industries, because I really believe that marketing is a skill set that is completely transferable across all of those areas. And I like to say that I've worked from the very functional and unsexy, so everything from toothpaste to deodorant to laundry detergent, to the much more sexy categories of beauty and fragrance. Tom Ford, Estee Lauder, some really lovely perks and freebies. And I've even worked on some more diverse categories, and I can see everyone has one tonight, of bubble tea. And what I've learned in my last 30 years career and 50 odd years of life is that every great adventure, every career milestone, and every shift in perspective starts exactly the same way, with a new beginning. And new beginnings can be exhilarating and exciting, but also terrifying and scary and daunting, because they often require us to step out of our comfort zone into something new. But what I know is that it is precisely in these moments of transition, when we stand on the edge of a fresh chapter, that we discover what we are truly capable of. For me, embracing a new chapter and a new beginning has never been about having a flawless guidebook. More, it's been about the courage to embrace every opportunity that life has thrown my way. And that brings me to my very first key learning. Lesson number 1, just say yes. I graduated from the University of WA in 1993 with an arts degree, a double English major in Shakespeare and Romanticism. What can I say? I loved English literature. I also had an I'm going to save the world attitude, courtesy of my 2 journalist parents who'd taken my brother and I all over the world on some of the stints and the gigs that they worked in. And they'd really instilled in my brother and I a very strong moral compass and a very strong purpose and set of values about what was wrong and what was right. And I always had this really deep need to leave a legacy that was bigger than myself and to be a voice for the marginalised where I could be. And even in my late teens, early 20s, I marched in protest marches, everything from nuclear disarmament to Aboriginal rights to closing the gender pay gap. I've always felt very, very deeply connected to some of the causes in this world. I launched into a career with Procter & Gamble straight out of university, and I lived in Perth. And when you live in Adelaide or Perth and you have aspirations to move to the big smoke of the eastern seaboard, you have to work twice as hard to build your brand and get promoted. So I spent 2 years as a territory sales rep, a pharmacy territory sales rep, which was a fantastic experience because it really built my resilience and grit. And after 2 years, I was promoted, and I remember packing my little bags and moving to the big smoke of Sydney, and I knew no one. And I remember being absolutely terrified. And I found a place to live in the newspaper, because that's how we did it in those days. There was no internet. And I remember moving in with these 2 girls that were in their maybe mid-30s, and to me they seemed incredibly old. But I forged an amazing life. I met my husband, who's somewhere in the audience tonight, And I really kind of embraced everything that Sydney had to offer. That was my first just say yes moment. And then my next just say yes moment was a few years later, fast forward to 2008, and I'm working for Colgate-Palmolive. And by then we had our beautiful little girl, Summer, who was 3. And my husband and I decided that we wanted to do an overseas stint, an expat experience. So I put my CV on a website, and the next thing I knew, it was picked up by a recruiter in the Middle East. And after numerous Zoom interviews, many psychometric profiling tests, I secured my dream job. It was a global brand manager role looking after Rexona for North Africa, Middle East, and Turkey. Just say yes. Now, what was really interesting was how friends and family reacted to the imminent move of my young family, because Gareth and I would never been to Dubai. People were horrified. I remember people saying to me, friends and family saying, "But what if you don't like it?" And I was quite incredulous about that, because I remember saying, well, then we come home. I mean, for me, the risk was far worth it for the adventure that lay on the other side. And what an adventure it was. We spent 6 years living and working in the Middle East. We had our beautiful son Chase, who's now nearly 15, so he has a certificate saying he was born in the UAE. And we had these amazing experiences and amazing holidays and met amazing people from different cultures and different backgrounds, and gained so much perspective and so many memories that we will take through the rest of our lives. Safari in Kenya, many, many trips to Egypt. And I love this picture because this is actually my first trip to Egypt. And I'm atop a camel, and you can see my little face, Perth girl, pinching herself that she's in front of the pyramids. Now, this was the first of many, many trips because it was part of my territory. And we also did an amazing trip with our extended family where we went on a boat down the Nile. Life-changing experiences. I also travelled to Iran, to Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Turkey, Kazakhstan. Just say yes. Lesson number 2, live with passion. And I say this to all the young people in the room because I know you're going to be on the precipice of choosing your career at some point fairly shortly. Choose a career you will love, because passion isn't a luxury, it's your fuel. When you find a career you love, the mantra says you will never work another day. And I can attest to that. So when you find a career you love, you stop trying to fit into a mold and you step into your actual power. So don't just look for a job that matches your job description, that matches your degree. Look for the problems you care enough about to want to solve. Notice what lights you up, what brings you energy, what takes you down. Follow that. Follow your passion, because your career is a long game, and make sure you're playing one that you actually care about. Lesson number 3, find a good mentor. They will rock your world. My mum in the middle there with my beautiful dad, who's also in the audience. Unfortunately, my mum passed away a couple of years ago, but she was my first female mentor. She was a career woman, a global journalist, a feminist, a wonderfully kind, beautiful empath. She was instrumental in my life and in shaping the person I am today, and of my brother. Now, she was 5'2" and 48 kilos. She was a little pocket rocket, and yet one of the toughest people I know. Mum was born in Manchester in the north of England, and God knows they breed them tough up there. And I have many wonderful memories of my mum and what a powerhouse she was, but one that really sticks in my mind was in my late teens. I was working for an Italian restaurant in Perth called Pepe's in Northbridge. And Pepe was a nice enough man, but he underpaid myself and some of the other teenage wait staff because he knew that we didn't have the confidence or the experience yet to really push back. And I relayed this story to my mum one night after one of my shifts. And the next thing I knew, I was being bundled into the car. And we were driving into Northbridge, and she pulled up out the front, and she marched into Pepe's, into the kitchen, found Pepe, and proceeded to give him a very big dressing down. Now, I think she might have threatened to write an exposé in her role as journalist on the Sunday Times that would uncover the way that he was treating the underpaid teens. What I do know is my next pay packet was decidedly fatter. That was my mum. The other thing I learnt later in life is the power of a good career mentor. Cheryl Buck was a senior female exec at Procter & Gamble in the late 90s. And what I know, the power of a good career mentor is it's someone who will advocate and speak on your behalf in rooms where you are not. And they will advocate for you up the line. And Cheryl was pretty brutally honest with me sometimes, which was probably what I needed at the time. But she also taught me the power of the fact that I was my own brand. And if I wanted to drive my career, it was as much attached to my capabilities and skill set as it was to the type of person I was and how I was showing up in the world. I've had other amazing mentors. So on the far left there, next to Yoda, is a wonderful previous boss at Colgate-Palmolive, Leslie Knight. And when I came back from Dubai, Leslie was a sessional lecturer at Sydney Uni, and she invited me into that world, and here we are 10 years later, and when I can, whenever I have the opportunity, I do say yes to teaching as a sessional lecturer because young people absolutely are part of what really lights me up. So I feel very privileged to have that. I also have a fantastic exec coach who's on the far right there, Vashti Whitfield. Now, exec coach, they take some money, you have to invest in them, but they're worth every dollar, okay? And one of the things that she's really been significant for me in is the ability to knock the imposter syndrome off my shoulder. Because believe you me, we all have it. And the other thing she makes me do is to really kind of assess myself at various moments in my career or in my life when I say, who am I being right now? How am I showing up in the world? And what legacy do I want to leave? And then two wonderful men in the audience, wherever you are, my dad and my husband, people who have always had my back, who are my cheerleaders, and also my truth tellers. Lesson number 4, lift as you climb. The women in my life have been a gift. From my mum, who you just heard about, to my nanas, my mentors, my friends, I have been blessed with amazingly supportive females. However, it has not always been this way. In my 30 years in corporate, I have seen women, quite frankly, be vile to one another, pitch against one another, compete, undermine, gossip, man up in the boardroom because they believe that there's not enough room in the boardroom for more than one female. And I have to say, this has always just broken my heart a little bit. I am where I am today because over the years, some of the most wonderful, talented, smart women ahead of me reached back and lifted me as they climbed. Now, I'm grateful to them, but I'm also grateful to the ones who tried to take me down because they built my grit and resilience and made me even more determined to pay it forward. Lesson number 5, the power of kindness, or don't be a dick. This one is short and sweet and is something I strive to live by. Life is full of moments. Your job is a moment in time. The title, the money, the car, the house, none of it really matters in the end. People, that's what matters. The people in your life. I have lost too many significant people in my life that I wish I could just have another hour with, or I wish I could have been more present for. The biggest learning of my 30-year career and my 50-odd-year life so far has been to not be a dick. To try to be the best version of myself that I can be every day, to be a good human, to be kind, compassionate, and authentic. Lesson number 6, perspective. In 2004, I married my soulmate, Gareth Robinson. 25 years later, we are still together. But, as anyone who's been married for a long period of time knows, these things take work. And 5 years ago, as happens sometimes when you're with the same person for a long time, we had some marital challenges. And we went to see a marriage counsellor. And at the beginning, and the irony with this, by the way, is my husband and I both communicate for a living. And yet we go to see a marriage counsellor who teaches us to communicate. So I think that's quite interesting. So at the time, we went every 2 weeks. Like, we really needed to kind of realign and recalibrate. 5 years later, we still go to that marriage counsellor. And we still go once a month. We invest in her, and she invests in us, because we believe she is a personal trainer for our marriage. And your marriage is actually one of the most important relationships you will ever have, apart from the one that you have with yourself. And I think I make this point because anything worth its weight in gold takes commitment, and because nothing is ever quite as shiny or perfect as it seems from the outside. So this is a photo from our wedding day. A moment of pure joy, surrounded by our closest friends. It's my husband in the middle, our brothers. 19 years later, one of those men, our best man Richard, his arms embracing the group, he would take his own life. A year later, my brother-in-law, Ben, the one with his arm in the air on the left, and that beautiful photo of him and I, he would also take his own life. He was the 4th man in the group within Gareth's friends that have all died by suicide. 4 good men gone far too soon. Families who will never really know the end of that type of grief. This too shall pass. It's one of my favourite mantras. It's actually a tattoo on my arm. Don't do that until you're 50. Legend has it, King Solomon asked for a phrase that would be true in all circumstances, the highs and the lows, and they gave him this, because it's a reminder of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Be here now. Lesson number 7, leave a legacy. Make a difference in the world. Try to leave it just a little bit better than it was when you came in. So to finish, I would like to end with a story about how we can all make a difference, no matter how tiny or insignificant our actions may be. A young girl was walking along a beach upon which thousands of starfish had washed up in a storm. And when she came to each starfish, she would bend down, pick it up, and throw it into the ocean. And people watched her with amusement. And eventually, a man approached her and said, "Little girl, why are you doing this? Look at this beach. It's covered with starfish. You can't possibly begin to make a difference." And the little girl seemed crushed and deflated for a minute. And then she thought about it, and she bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. And then she looked up at the man and she said, "Well, I just made a difference to that one." Every day is an invitation to begin again. Thank you.